That poor girl saved a millionaire from being run over. Days later, he was shocked to see police cars at his house. The autumn sun cast long shadows over the narrow streets of Brooklyn and New York. 7-year-old Lily, with unruly brown hair and a worn school uniform, hurried home. Her stomach grumbled. School lunch had been meager, as always. Hopefully, Grandma made stew, she thought, clutching the frayed strap of her backpack. A few yards ahead, a man in an expensive suit spoke on his cell phone, gesturing agitatedly, completely oblivious to the world around him. Lily watched him for a moment, intrigued by his air of importance. Suddenly, time seemed to slow down. The man, still engrossed in his conversation, stepped into the street. A speeding car rounded the corner, tires screeching. Lily didn't think. She acted. Her small feet pounded against the asphalt as she ran. Her heart hammered in her ears. With a desperate leap, she grabbed the man's sleeve and pulled with all the strength her thin body could muster. The man stumbled backward, falling on top of Lily. The car whizzed past inches from them. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, chaos erupted. "My God, are you all right?" the man gasped, helping Lily up. His blue eyes, wide with shock, examined the girl. Lily nodded, trembling. "You almost died," she stated simply. The man chuckled, a shaky, incredulous sound. "And you saved me. What's your name, little hero?" "Lily," she replied, suddenly shy under the stranger's intense gaze. "Lily," he repeated, as if savoring the name. "I'm Richard Walker. You're a very brave girl, Lily. How can I thank—" But Lily was already backing away. "I have to go," she mumbled, the fear of the situation finally settling in. "My grandma will be worried." Before Richard could respond, she darted down the street, her heart still racing. Lily climbed the creaking stairs of the dilapidated building she called home, 2 steps at a time. She burst through the door of the small apartment, breathless. "Grandma! Grandma!" she shouted, throwing her backpack onto the worn floor. Evelyn Davis emerged from the tiny kitchen, wiping her hands on a faded apron. At 65, her face was etched with deep wrinkles, but her eyes shone with love as she saw her granddaughter. "What is it, sweetie?" she asked, concern coloring her voice. Lily poured out the story in a rapid stream of words, her eyes shining with the thrill of the adventure. Evelyn paled as the story unfolded. When Lily finished, she pulled the girl into a tight hug. "Oh, Lily," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You were very brave, but also very reckless. What if the car had hit you?" Lily pulled away, frowning. "But Grandma, I couldn't let him die," Evelyn sighed, running a hand through her grey hair. "No, I suppose you couldn't. You have your mother's heart." Her voice cracked on the last word. Lily fell silent. Mentions of her mother were rare and always tinged with sadness. "Come on," Evelyn said finally, forcing a smile. "I made vegetable stew. You must be starving after all that excitement." As Lily sat at the small, wobbly table, her thoughts drifted back to the man she had saved, Richard Walker. There was something in his eyes, surprise, gratitude, and something else she couldn't name. Something that made her stomach twist in a strange way. Little did she know that that brief encounter on the street would change the course of her life forever. Across town, in his penthouse office overlooking the Manhattan skyline, Richard Walker held a glass of whiskey in trembling hands. He couldn't shake the image of that small and fearless girl. "Lily," he murmured, a slow smile spreading across his face. "I need to find her again." He picked up the phone, dialing a number he rarely used. "John, it's Richard Walker. I need you to find someone for me." Night fell over New York City, cloaking the city in shadows. In 2 very different corners of the city, 2 people lay awake, replaying the day's events in their minds. Neither of them knew that their lives had just become intertwined in ways neither could foresee. Fate had rolled the dice. The game was about to begin. The alarm clock blared at 5:30 a.m., its shrill sound echoing through the tiny apartment. Evelyn Davis rose with a groan, her arthritis protesting with every movement. She glanced at the makeshift bed on the couch where Lily still slept soundly. Evelyn sighed. Another day, another battle. She shuffled into the cramped kitchen, turning on the old, unreliable stove to heat water for coffee. The cupboard creaked as she opened it, revealing nearly empty shelves. Stale bread, a little margarine, half a box of cheap cereal. It would have to do. "Lily, dear," she called softly. "Time to wake up." The girl stirred, mumbling. Evelyn smiled sadly. Lily was so much like her mother. Same brown hair, same upturned nose, same stubborn streak. As Lily dressed, Evelyn prepared the meager breakfast. Her eyes fell on the framed photo on the table, her daughter and son-in-law smiling, holding baby Lily. The accident that took them 5 years ago was still an open wound. Mysterious circumstances, the police had said. Evelyn never believed it. "Grandma, I'm hungry." Lily's voice brought her back to the present. "Here you go, sweetie." Evelyn placed the bowl of cereal in front of her granddaughter. "Eat up. You need energy for school." Lily devoured the cereal, oblivious to the worry on her grandmother's face. Evelyn checked the nearly empty refrigerator, doing mental calculations. The cleaning job money barely covered the rent. How would they buy food this week? "Grandma, I need new supplies for school," Lily said hesitantly. Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment. Another expense they couldn't afford. "We'll see what we can do, dear," she replied, forcing a smile. At 7:30 they left the dilapidated building. Evelyn walked Lily to school, ignoring the pain in her knees. At the gate, she kissed her granddaughter's forehead. "Have a good day, sweetie. Remember, you're smart and strong. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Lily nodded, hugging her grandmother before running inside. Evelyn watched her go, her heart heavy. How could she give Lily the life she deserved? With a resigned sigh, Evelyn began her long walk to the house where she cleaned. Another day of hard work for meager pay. But for Lily, she would do anything. Across town, Richard Walker awoke in his king-size bed, silk sheets sliding over his skin. He stretched, gazing out the bedroom window at the panoramic view of New York City. His butler, Alfred, entered silently. "Good morning, sir. Breakfast is served on the terrace. Your first meeting is at 9 a.m. Richard nodded, getting up. As he shaved in the marble bathroom, his thoughts returned to the girl who had saved his life the day before. Lily, her dirty face, her determined eyes, her astonishing courage. On the terrace, a meal fit for a king awaited him. Poached eggs, smoked salmon, fresh fruit, premium coffee. Richard barely touched the food, his mind elsewhere. "Alfred," he called. "Contact John Miller. Tell him I need his services." Alfred raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. John was the private investigator Richard used for delicate matters. At 8:30, Richard's driver awaited him in the limousine. On the drive to the office, Richard watched the streets of New York blur past. How many Lilies were out there, struggling to survive? In the imposing skyscraper that housed his corporate headquarters, Richard was greeted with deference. Secretaries bowed, executives greeted him nervously. He barely noticed, his mind still on yesterday's little hero. The morning passed in a whirlwind of meetings and multi-million-dollar decisions. Richard signed contracts, closed deals, made and broke fortunes with the ease of breathing, but his heart wasn't in it. At noon, John Miller entered his office. "Mr. Walker," the investigator greeted, taking a seat. "How can I help you?" Richard hesitated, suddenly feeling foolish. "I need you to find someone. A girl named Lily, about 7 years old, brown hair. She saved me from being run over yesterday." John raised his eyebrows, but his voice remained professional. "Any other information? Address? Last name?" Richard shook his head. "Nothing. I know it's not much, but don't worry, sir. I've worked with less. I'll get back to you soon." When John left, Richard found himself staring out at the view of New York from his penthouse office. Somewhere down there, a brave little girl was fighting against a world that seemed determined to bring her down. "I'll find you, Lily," he murmured to himself, "and I'll thank you properly." What Richard didn't know was that his search for Lily would set in motion a chain of events that would forever change not only her life, but his own. Fate had set its gears in motion, and there was no turning back. Night fell over New York, cloaking the city in a blanket of twinkling lights. In his luxurious apartment, Richard contemplated the city, a glass of expensive whiskey in hand. In a distant neighborhood, Lily and Evelyn shared a bowl of thin soup, grateful for what little they had. Two worlds, so close geographically, yet separated by a chasm of circumstances. Little did they know that this chasm was about to be crossed, for better or for worse. The afternoon sun filtered through the dirty windows of Evelyn and Lily's small apartment. Evelyn scrubbed the kitchen floor, her knees protesting with every movement. The smell of cheap disinfectant filled the air. A firm knock on the door broke the silence. Evelyn froze. No one ever visited them. Her heart raced. Were they bill collectors? The landlord impatient for the overdue rent. "Lily, stay put," she whispered, rising with difficulty. She opened the door cautiously, finding herself facing a tall man, impeccably dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her yearly rent. "Can I help you?" she asked suspiciously. Richard Walker smiled, trying to appear less intimidating. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm looking for Lily. Does she live here?" Evelyn's blood ran cold. What did this rich man want with her granddaughter? "Who are you?" Her voice trembled slightly. Before Richard could answer, Lily appeared behind her grandmother, her eyes widening in recognition. "It's you," she exclaimed. "The man I saved." Evelyn stared, shocked, from Lily to Richard. This was the man from Lily's fantastical story. Richard knelt down, getting on Lily's level. "Hello, little hero. Remember me?" Lily nodded vigorously. "Of course. You almost turned into car pancakes." Richard laughed, a rich, genuine sound. "That's true. And you saved me. I came to thank you properly." Evelyn, recovering from the shock, opened the door wider. "Please, come in, Mr. Walker, Richard Walker," he replied, stepping into the tiny apartment. The contrast was stark. Richard, in his Armani suit, seemed absurdly out of place amidst the worn furniture and peeling walls. "Would you like some coffee, Mr. Walker?" Evelyn offered automatically, years of good manners overriding her discomfort. "No, so thank you, Mrs. Davis, Evelyn Davis." Richard nodded, his eyes scanning the apartment, noting every sign of poverty and struggle. His gaze settled on Lily, who was watching him with childish curiosity. "Lily," he began, "I came to thank you for what you did. It was an incredibly brave act." Lily shrugged, a surprisingly mature gesture for her 7 years. "Anyone would have done the same." "No, sweetie," Evelyn intervened softly. "Not everyone would have your courage." Richard agreed. "Your grandmother is right, Lily. What you did was extraordinary." He turned to Evelyn. "Mrs. Davis, I'd like to offer my gratitude in a more tangible way." He pulled an envelope from his inside jacket pocket. Evelyn took it with trembling hands, opening it to reveal a sum of money that made her eyes widen. "Mr. Walker, this is too much. We can't accept." Richard raised a hand. "Please, I insist. It's the least I can do." Evelyn hesitated, her pride battling against desperate need. Lily watched the scene, sensing the tension in the air without fully understanding it. "Grandma," she said suddenly, "can the rich man help you get better?" The silence that followed was heavy. Evelyn blushed, embarrassed. Richard looked from Lily to Evelyn, noticing for the first time the way the older woman moved with difficulty, the lines of pain etched on her face. "Mrs. Davis," he said gently, "are you ill?" Evelyn sighed. "Arthritis. And a few other things. Nothing serious, just uncomfortable." Richard nodded, understanding. He knelt down again, looking directly at Lily. "Lily, you saved my life. Please let me repay you by helping your grandmother." Lily smiled, a bright smile that lit up her whole face. "Are you going to make Grandma all better?" Richard felt something tighten in his chest. "I'm going to do my best." He stood up, facing Evelyn. Mrs. Davis, please allow me to pay for your medical treatment, the best doctors, the best medication, anything you need. Evelyn shook her head, tears in her eyes. Mr. Walker, your generosity is overwhelming. We don't even know you. Richard smiled kindly. You know enough. I'm the man whose life your granddaughter saved. Let me return the favor. Lily tugged on her grandmother's sleeve. Please, Grandma, let him help you. Evelyn looked at her granddaughter, at the rich man who had appeared out of nowhere offering help, at the dilapidated apartment around her. Years of struggle, of pride, of doing everything herself. Maybe it was time to accept help. Very well, she said finally, her voice almost a whisper. We accept your offer, Mr. Walker, and God bless you for your kindness. Richard smiled, relieved. Excellent. I'll make the arrangements immediately. And please, call me Richard. He took a card from his pocket, handing it to Evelyn. My personal number. Call any time if you need anything. When Richard left, the small apartment suddenly seemed very empty. Evelyn held the envelope and the card as if they were sacred objects. Lily jumped up and down with excitement. Grandma, the rich man is going to make you all better. Evelyn hugged her granddaughter, silent tears streaming down her face. Yes, sweetie, it seems he is. Outside, Richard stepped into his limousine, his mind reeling. The driver looked at him through the rearview mirror. Where to, sir? Richard hesitated. To the office, James. I have some calls to make. As the car glided through the streets of New York, Richard couldn't shake the image of the small apartment, of Evelyn with her silent pain, of Lily with her bright, courageous eyes. He picked up his phone, dialing a familiar number. Dr. Miller, it's Richard Walker. I need a favor. The sun set over New York City, casting long shadows across the streets. In a modest apartment, a grandmother and granddaughter embraced, weeping with relief and hope. In a luxurious limousine, a rich man made plans, feeling for the first time in years that he was doing something truly meaningful. Fate had intertwined their lives in unexpected ways. And this was just the beginning. Dr. Miller's office was an oasis of calm and luxury. Evelyn Davis sat stiffly in the leather chair, her eyes nervously scanning the framed diplomas on the walls. Lily, beside her, flipped through a children's magazine, oblivious to her grandmother's tension. The door opened and Dr. Miller entered, followed by Richard Walker. Evelyn rose hurriedly, a grimace of pain crossing her face. Please, Mrs. Davis, and stay seated, the doctor said gently. We're here to help you feel better, not worse. Richard smiled encouragingly at Evelyn. Dr. Miller is the best rheumatologist in New York. He'll take good care of you. The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of examinations, questions and explanations. Evelyn, accustomed to crowded public clinics and rushed appointments, was stunned by the doctor's meticulous attention. Finally, Dr. Miller sat down, his face serious but kind. Mrs. Davis, your arthritis is severe, but treatable. With the right medication and regular physical therapy, we can significantly improve your quality of life. Evelyn swallowed hard, tears in her eyes. And how much would this cost? Richard intervened softly. Don't worry about that, Evelyn. It's all covered. Lily, who had been quiet until then, jumped up from her chair. Is Grandma going to be okay? Doctor. Miller smiled at the girl. Yes, little one. Your grandmother is going to feel much better. As they left the doctor's office, Evelyn clutched a stack of prescriptions and instructions. Her mind reeled, still unable to believe the turnaround in her fortunes. Richard, she said softly, how can I ever thank? He shook his head. There's no need. Seeing you better will be thanks enough. In the following weeks, Evelyn and Lily's lives underwent a remarkable transformation. The treatment began to take effect, and Evelyn found herself moving with more ease, the constant pain gradually subsiding. Richard became a regular presence in their lives. He appeared 2 or 3 times a week, always bringing something, gourmet food, books for Lily, flowers to brighten the small apartment. One sunny afternoon, Richard took Lily to Central Park. As the girl ran among the trees, laughing, he watched her with a soft smile. "Uncle Richard," Lily shouted. She had started calling him that recently. "Look what I found!" She ran back, holding a pigeon feather as if it were a precious treasure. Richard knelt down to examine her discovery. "It's beautiful, Lily. You know, they say finding a feather is a sign of good luck." Lily's eyes shone. "Really? Then I'll keep it forever." Richard laughed, a rich, genuine sound that attracted curious glances from passers-by. Who was this elegant man laughing with a girl clearly from humble origins? Back at the apartment, Evelyn greeted them with a smile. Her face, once constantly etched with pain, now seemed more relaxed, younger. "Did you have a good time?" she asked, serving homemade lemonade. Lily launched into an animated account of their adventures, while Richard watched the domestic scene with a strange feeling in his chest. Was this what it meant to have a family? Later, with Lily asleep, Evelyn and Richard talked in low voices in the small kitchen. "She adores you," Evelyn said softly. "So you know, Lily never had a father figure. My son-in-law." She stopped, biting her lip. Richard waited patiently, sensing that he was about to hear something important. Evelyn took a deep breath. Lily's parents, their death wasn't a simple accident, like the official reports say. Richard leaned forward, his expression serious. "Serious, what do you mean, Evelyn?" "Peter, my son-in-law, worked for a large corporation. Weeks before the accident, he told me he had discovered something irregular, something big." Evelyn lowered her voice even further. "He was planning to report it, but then she didn't need to finish the sentence." Richard felt a chill run down his spine. Large corporations, irregularities, suspicious deaths. This sounded dangerously familiar. "Evelyn," he said carefully, "do you have any proof of this?" She shook her head. "Nothing concrete, just suspicions and strange coincidences. The police wouldn't listen, of course." Richard was silent for a long moment, his mind racing. Finally, he spoke. "I'll look into this, Evelyn. I promise I have resources, connections. If there's something to uncover, I'll uncover it." Evelyn looked at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Why, Richard? Why do you care so much about us?" Richard smiled softly, his eyes drifting to the couch where Lily slept. "Because that brave little girl saved my life. And in the process, she may have saved much more than that." When Richard left that night, his mind was in turmoil. He picked up his phone, dialing a familiar number. "John, it's Richard Walker. I need you to investigate a car accident from 5 years ago. Victims, Peter and Amelia Davis, and John, be discreet. This could be bigger than we think." As his limousine glided through the night streets of New York, Richard looked out the window, his thoughts on Lily and Evelyn. He had entered their lives to repay a favor, but now he was in too deep to turn back. "What have you gotten yourself into, Richard?" he murmured to himself. But deep down, he already knew the answer. He was doing what was right, for the first time in a long time. Fate had intertwined their lives for a reason, and Richard was determined to find out what that reason was, no matter the cost. Night fell over New York City, cloaking the city in a mantle of mystery. In a small apartment, a little girl slept peacefully, dreaming of parks and lucky feathers. In a luxurious mansion, a rich man made phone calls, moving pieces on an invisible chessboard. The truth was out there, waiting to be discovered. And with that, truth would come danger, shocking revelations, and perhaps, finally, justice. Richard Walker's office was silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioner and the occasional clink of ice in his whiskey glass. It was late at night, and the city of New York glittered outside, a carpet of light seen from the top of his corporate skyscraper. Richard stared at his computer screen, tired eyes absorbing the information John, his private investigator, had sent. The report on Peter and Amelia Davis, Lily's parents, was a disturbing read. Car accident on Route 9, perfect weather conditions, brakes inexplicably failed. Richard frowned. Accidents happens, of course, but this smelled of a cover-up. He clicked on another file, this one detailing Peter Davis's professional history. His eyes widened as he saw a familiar name, Walker Enterprises. It can't be, he murmured, leaning forward. Walker Enterprises was his own corporation. Peter Davis had worked there as a senior accountant until his death. Richard felt his stomach churn. The possibility that his company could be linked to the death of Lily's parents was sickening. He was so engrossed in his thoughts that he almost didn't hear the door to his office open. David Miller, his former partner and current vice president, walked in without knocking. "Working late, Richard?" David asked, his voice casual, but his eyes sharp. Richard quickly closed the windows on his computer. "Just reviewing some old figures," he lied smoothly. David approached, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor. "Old figures. I hope you're not digging up old stories." David's tone was light, but there was a veiled threat in his words. Richard felt the hairs on the back of his neck prickle. "Just doing a routine audit," Richard replied, keeping his voice steady. "You never know what you might find." David smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Well, be careful, Richard. Sometimes the past is best left in the past, for everyone's sake." With a nod, David left, leaving Richard with a feeling of unease. The message was clear. Stop investigating, but Richard couldn't stop. Not now. Not when he was so close to uncovering the truth. In the days that followed, Richard delved deeper into his investigation, always looking over his shoulder, always cautious. He discovered discrepancies in Walker Enterprises, accounts, suspicious transactions that Peter Davis had flagged for review shortly before his death. With each new discovery, the weight in his chest increased. How could he tell Lily and Evelyn that his own company might be linked to the tragedy that changed their lives? One afternoon, while visiting Evelyn and Lily's apartment, Richard was particularly distracted. Lily, perceptive as always, noticed his preoccupation. "Uncle Richard, why are you sad?" she asked, her large eyes filled with childish concern. Richard forced a smile. "And I'm not sad, sweetie. Just thinking about work things." Lily frowned, unconvinced. Then her face lit up with an idea. She ran to her room and returned with a colorful drawing. "Look, Uncle Richard, I made this for you at school today." The drawing showed 3 stick figures, a small one with brown hair, a taller one with gray hair, and a tall male figure in the middle. Above, in childish letters, it read, "My family." Richard felt a lump in his throat. "It's beautiful, Lily," he said softly, pulling the girl into a hug. In that moment, looking at Lily's innocent drawing, Richard felt the full weight of his dilemma. How could he destroy this little family's newfound happiness with revelations about the past? But how could he hide the truth, knowing what he knew? Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Richard talked to Evelyn in the small kitchen. "Did you find anything?" Evelyn asked in a low voice, her eyes filled with hope and fear. Richard hesitated. "I'm making progress," he said finally. "But Evelyn, I need you to understand. This investigation could lead to dangerous places, places that could affect Lily." Evelyn paled, but her voice remained firm. "I understand, but Richard, we need to know the truth. For Peter and Amelia's memory, for Lily." Richard nodded slowly. "You're right. I promise. I'll get to the bottom of this. But I need you and Lily to be safe. I can arrange a safer apartment for you, with security." Evelyn shook her head. "No, Richard. This is our home. We're not going to hide." Richard admired her courage, even as he worried about their safety. That night, driving back to his empty mansion, Richard found himself at a crossroads. On one side, the truth, potentially devastating. On the other, Lily and Evelyn's safety and happiness. He picked up his phone, dialing John's number. "John, I need you to dig deeper, but be extremely careful. We're dealing with something dangerous here." Hanging up, Richard looked out the window at the blurring lights of New York. He had entered this situation wanting to repay a favor, but now he was in the middle of something much bigger. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered. But at what cost would that truth come? And was Richard prepared to pay that price? As his limousine glided through the night streets, Richard made a silent promise. He would uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be, and he would protect Lily and Evelyn, no matter the cost. The game was getting dangerous, the stakes higher than ever. But Richard Walker wasn't a man to back down from a challenge, especially not when there was so much at stake. Night swallowed the city, the shadows of the past lengthening, threatening to engulf the present. But amidst the darkness, a light of hope persisted. The hope of justice, of truth, of redemption. And at the center of it all, a little girl slept peacefully, dreaming of her new family, unaware of the storms brewing on the horizon. The autumn sun cast long shadows through the windows of Evelyn and Lily's small apartment. Richard Walker sat at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. His normally composed face was etched with lines of worry. Evelyn entered the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She stopped when she saw Richard's expression. "What is it?" she asked, her heart quickening with a premonition. Richard took a deep breath. "Evelyn, we need to talk about Peter and Amelia." Evelyn sat down slowly, her eyes never leaving Richard's face. "You found something?" It wasn't a question. Richard nodded gravely. "Yes, and I'm afraid it's not good news." Over the next few minutes, Richard told Evelyn what he had discovered: the connection between Peter and Walker Enterprises, the discrepancies in the accounts that Peter had noticed, the strange coincidence of the accident shortly after Peter had flagged those transactions for review. "Phaeton and Walker Enterprises is my company, Evelyn." Evelyn paled, her hands trembling slightly. "Are you telling me that your company might have been responsible for the death of my daughter and son-in-law?" Richard closed his eyes for a moment, the guilt weighing on him like an anchor. "It's possible. I don't have concrete proof yet, but the evidence is concerning." Evelyn rose abruptly, turning to face the window. Her whole body trembled. "All these years," she whispered, "all these years I knew something was wrong. But this—" Richard stood up, placing a hand gently on Evelyn's shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn. More than I can express. But I promise you I'll get to the bottom of this. I'll find out the truth, no matter the cost." Evelyn turned to face him, tears glistening in her eyes. "And then what? What happens when the truth comes out? What happens to Lily?" As if summoned by her name, a small noise came from the kitchen doorway. Richard and Evelyn turned to see Lily standing there, her eyes wide and frightened. "Grandma," she said in a small voice, "why are you crying? What happened to Mommy and Daddy?" Evelyn let out a muffled sob, rushing to embrace her granddaughter. Richard stood frozen, feeling helpless and guilty. "Lily, sweetie," Evelyn said softly, "it's nothing. Grown-ups sometimes get sad remembering the past." But Lily wasn't easily fooled. Her eyes turned to Richard, filled with confusion and fear. "Uncle Richard, what's happening?" Richard knelt down in front of Lily, his heart breaking at the sight of the fear in the girl's eyes. "Lily," he began, but the words failed him. How could he explain to a 7-year-old that her world was about to be turned upside down again? Before Richard could find the words, his phone rang. He pulled it from his pocket, frowning as he saw the name of his press secretary on the screen. "Excuse me," he murmured, answering the call. As he listened, his face grew increasingly pale. Evelyn and Lily watched with growing concern. "I understand," he said finally. "Do what you can to contain this. I'll be at the office in half an hour." Hanging up, Richard faced Evelyn with a grave expression. "The rumors have started circulating. Someone leaked information to the press about the investigation." Evelyn gasped, clutching Lily tighter. "What does that mean?" "It means we need to act fast," Richard said, already moving towards the door. "Evelyn, grab some clothes for you and Lily. It's not safe for you to stay here now." Lily looked from Richard to her grandmother, fear evident in her face. "Grandma, what's happening? Why do we have to leave?" Evelyn knelt down, cupping Lily's face in her hands. "Sweetie, we need to take a little trip. It'll be like an adventure, okay?" Lily nodded slowly, still looking scared, but trusting her grandmother. While Evelyn hurried to pack, Richard made a few more calls, arranging a safe place for them to stay. His heart was heavy with guilt and worry. Half an hour later, a limousine with tinted windows pulled up in front of the building. Richard helped Evelyn and Lily inside, nervously glancing around for any lurking paparazzi. "Where are we going?" Lily asked, her voice small in the silence of the car. Richard forced a smile. "To a safe place, Lily. A place where you two can rest while I take care of some things." As the car pulled away, Richard saw a group of reporters arriving on the street. They had escaped just in time. On the way to the safe house, Richard called his press secretary again. "What's the situation?" he asked tensely. "Not good, sir," came the reply. "So the major newspapers are already preparing headlines. Industry tycoon linked to mysterious death. Corporate scandal covered up for years." "It's a shitstorm, sir." Richard closed his eyes, feeling a headache forming. "Prepare a press conference for tomorrow morning. I'll face this head on." Hanging up, he looked at Evelyn and Lily. The girl had fallen asleep in her grandmother's lap, exhausted by the day's turmoil. Evelyn met Richard's gaze, her eyes filled with worry and something else. "Trust." "It's going to be all right," Richard said softly, unsure if he was trying to convince Evelyn or himself. Evelyn nodded slowly. "I know it will. You'll fix this, Richard." For Lily. Evelyn's words weighed heavily on Richard. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, facing the media, possibly losing his company, perhaps even facing criminal charges. But looking at Lily's small sleeping form, he knew he would do all of that and more. Because Lily had saved his life that day on the street, and now it was his turn to save hers. The car continued through the night, carrying them towards an uncertain future. But amidst the approaching storm, one thing was certain. Richard Walker wouldn't rest until the truth was revealed and justice was served, no matter the cost to himself. The sun had barely risen when Richard Walker's limousine rounded the corner onto his exclusive street. He hadn't slept, spending the entire night preparing for the press conference he would face in a few hours. His body craved rest, but his mind was on high alert. That's when he saw them, 3 police cars parked in front of his mansion, their lights flashing silently in the pre-dawn gloom. "Damn it," Richard muttered, feeling his stomach sink. As the car slowly approached, Richard was transported back to that fateful day only a few weeks ago, but which felt like a lifetime ago. The autumn sun was shining, and Richard was walking briskly down the sidewalk, phone pressed to his ear. No, absolutely not," he was saying vehemently. "Tell them we won't accept less than 50 million. It's our final offer." He was so engrossed in his conversation that he barely noticed the traffic light changing. He stepped into the street, still arguing on the phone. Suddenly, a shout pierced the air. "Watch out!" Small hands grabbed him, pulling him back with surprising strength. Richard stumbled, nearly falling, as a car whizzed past inches from where he had been standing. Shocked, he turned to see a small girl with unruly brown hair staring at him with wide eyes. "You almost became a car pancake," she said, her voice a mixture of fear and childish reprimand. Richard was speechless for a moment, his heart pounding frantically. Then, the reality of what had just happened hit him. You saved my life," he said, incredulous. The girl shrugged, as if saving distracted adults was something she did every day. "You should pay more attention. My grandma says cell phones are dangerous when you're walking." Richard couldn't help but smile. "Your grandma is a wise woman. What's your name, little hero?" "Lily," she replied, her initial shyness giving way to curiosity. "What's yours?" Richard Walker." He knelt down to her level. "Lily, what you did was very brave. How can I thank you?" Lily seemed to think for a moment. "Well, you could buy me and my grandma some ice cream. She loves ice cream, but she says it's too expensive." Richard felt something tighten in his chest. This child, who didn't have much, had just saved a stranger's life, and her request was for ice cream for her grandmother. "You know what, Lily? I think I can do better than ice cream. What do you think of—" The sound of someone knocking on the car window brought Richard back to the present. A police officer stood there, his face serious. "Mr. Walker, we need you to come with us." Richard nodded slowly, his heart heavy. He stepped out of the car, immediately surrounded by camera flashes. Apparently, the news had already leaked. "Richard Walker," a reporter shouted, "is it true that your company is linked to the death of the Davises?" "Mr. Walker, did you know about the irregularities at Walker Enterprises?" The questions came from all sides, but Richard remained silent, following the officers into his house. In the living room, a middle-aged man in a cheap suit was waiting for him. "Mr. Walker, I'm Detective Thompson. We have some questions about the accident that killed Peter and Amelia Davis 5 years ago." Richard nodded gravely. "I understand, but before we begin, I need to make a call. It's urgent." The detective hesitated, then reluctantly agreed. Richard grabbed his phone, dialing the number of the safe apartment where he had left Evelyn and Lily. Evelyn, it's Richard. Listen, something's happened." He had barely begun to explain when he heard a muffled cry from the other end of the line. "Oh my God! Lily, quick! We need to go!" "Evelyn! Evelyn!" Richard called, but the line went dead. He turned to the detective, panic evident in his eyes. "Please, I need to go. There are people who need me, who might be in danger." Detective Thompson shook his head. "I'm sorry, Mr. Walker, but you can't leave. We have questions that need to be answered." The minutes that followed seemed to drag on for hours. Richard answered the questions mechanically, his mind torn between the interrogation and his worry for Evelyn and Lily. Then, suddenly, there was a commotion outside. Richard heard a familiar voice shouting his name. "Richard! Richard!" He jumped to his feet, running to the front door, ignoring the detective's protests. Outside, pushing through the crowd of reporters, were Evelyn and Lily. "Richard!" Lily cried, tears streaming down her face. "What's happening? Why are there so many police?" Evelyn looked pale and frightened, holding Lily tightly. "We saw the news. We couldn't stay away." Richard felt his heart break at the sight of the fear in Lily's eyes. He knelt down, opening his arms, and Lily ran to him, sobbing. "Shh, it's okay," he murmured, hugging her tightly. "It's going to be okay." But even as he said the words, he knew they weren't true. Detective Thompson approached, his face a mask of determination. "Mr. Walker, we need to continue our questioning. And now, with these new witnesses, we have even more questions." Richard rose slowly, still holding Lily. He looked at Evelyn, seeing the fear and confusion in her eyes. "Evelyn," he said softly, "take Lily inside. There's a guest room upstairs. Stay there until I can explain everything." Evelyn nodded, reaching for Lily, but the girl clung to Richard, crying harder. "No, Uncle Richard, don't go. Please don't let them take you like they took Mommy and Daddy." Lily's words were like a stab to Richard's heart. He knelt down again, gently pulling Lily away to look into her eyes. "Lily, listen. I promise I'll come back. I promise I'll explain everything. But right now, I need you to be brave. Can you do that for me?" Lily sniffled, then nodded slowly. "Do you really promise you'll come back?" Richard felt tears in his own eyes. "I promise, sweetie. I'll always come back for you." With one last hug, he handed Lily over to Evelyn. As the two of them climbed the stairs, Richard turned to face Detective Thompson. "All right, Detective. I'm ready to answer your questions. All of them." As he was led back into the living room, Richard cast one last glance towards the top of the stairs, where Lily was watching, silent tears streaming down her face. In that moment, Richard swore to himself that, no matter what happened, he would protect Lily and Evelyn, even if it meant losing everything he had built. Because in the end, he realized they were the only thing that truly mattered. Lily sat on the enormous bed in the guest room, her small fingers clutching the silk comforter. Her eyes, still red from crying, wandered around the luxurious room, so different from the small apartment she called home. Everything seemed too big, too bright, as if she had fallen into a fairy tale. But it wasn't a happy fairy tale. "Grandma," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "why did the police take Uncle Richard?" Evelyn sighed, Sitting down beside her granddaughter, she wrapped an arm around Lily's shoulders, pulling her close. "It's complicated, sweetie. Grown-ups sometimes do things that are hard to understand." Lily frowned and was unsatisfied with the answer. "But Uncle Richard is good. He bought me ice cream and helped you get better. Police only take bad people, right?" Evelyn felt her heart clench. How could she explain the complexity of the situation to a 7-year-old? "Not always, Lily. Sometimes the police need to ask questions to understand what really happened. Like when the teacher asks who scribbled on the desk," Lily asked, her eyes lighting up with understanding. Evelyn couldn't help but smile slightly. "Something like that. Yes." At that moment, there was a knock on the door. A man in a suit entered, his face serious but kind. "Mrs. Davis, I'm Detective Thompson. I'd like to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind." Evelyn nodded slowly, turning to Lily. "Sweetie, why don't you go explore a little? I'm sure Uncle Richard wouldn't mind if you took a look around the house." Lily's eyes widened at the idea of exploring the mansion, but she hesitated. "Are you sure, Grandma?" "I don't want to leave you alone," Evelyn smiled, touched by her granddaughter's concern. "I'll be fine. Go on, explore. Maybe you'll find something interesting." With one last hesitant glance, Lily left the room, her small footsteps echoing in the hallway. Detective Thompson sat down in a nearby armchair, his notepad open. "Mrs. Davis, can you tell me how you met Richard Walker?" Evelyn took a deep breath, beginning to tell the story of the day Lily saved Richard. As she spoke, she could see the detective's expression changing, a mixture of surprise and skepticism in his eyes. "And since then, Mr. Walker has been helping you?" he asked. Evelyn nodded. "Yes. He paid for my medical treatment. He's been very kind to Lily. And at no point did he mention knowing your son-in-law, Peter Davis." Evelyn froze. "No, not until recently, when he started investigating the accident." The detective made some notes, his face unreadable. "Mrs. Davis, are you aware that Mr. Walker's company may have been involved in the death of your daughter and son-in-law?" Evelyn felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Hearing it said so directly by a law enforcement officer made it all terribly real. Meanwhile, Lily wandered through the halls of the mansion, her eyes wide with wonder at the opulence surrounding her. Huge paintings, soft carpets, strange statues. It was like being in a museum. She stopped in front of a partially open door, hearing voices coming from inside. Curious, she crept closer silently. "We can't let Walker talk to the press," an agitated male voice said. "Calm down, David," another voice, calmer. "We have the situation under control." Lily frowned. Who was David, and why didn't they want Uncle Richard talking to the reporters? Determined to find out more, she tiptoed away, her childish mind already hatching a plan. Back in the guest room, Evelyn's interrogation continued. "Mrs. Davis, I understand this is a difficult situation," Detective Thompson said softly, "but I need you to be completely honest. Is there anything else you haven't told me?" Evelyn hesitated, thinking about Richard's investigation, the suspicions about Walker Enterprises. But before she could answer, there was a commotion downstairs. "Mr. Walker! Mr. Walker!" Evelyn and the detective rushed to the window. Down below, a crowd of reporters swarmed in front of the mansion. Richard was being escorted back inside by police officers, his face a mask of determination. "Richard Walker is a corporate killer. Justice for the Davises. How much more blood on your hands, Walker?" The shouts were cruel, accusatory. Evelyn felt her heart sink. How had things gotten to this point? Lily, drawn by the noise, ran back into the room. "Grandma, Uncle Richard is back, but people are shouting bad things." Evelyn pulled Lily away from the window, but it was too late. The girl had seen and heard enough. "Why are they calling Uncle Richard a killer?" Lily asked, tears welling up in her eyes. "He wouldn't hurt anyone. He saved me." Evelyn hugged Lily tightly, not knowing what to say. Detective Thompson watched the scene with a mixture of sympathy and professional detachment. At that moment, The door opened and Richard entered, looking exhausted and dejected. His eyes lit up slightly when he saw Lily, but the shadow of worry didn't leave his face. "Lily, Evelyn," he said softly, "I'm so sorry for all of this." Lily ran to him, hugging his legs. "Uncle Richard, tell them you're good. Tell them you didn't hurt anyone." Richard knelt down, hugging Lily back. "Oh, sweetie, I wish it were that simple." Detective Thompson cleared his throat. "Mr. Walker, we need to continue our questioning." Richard nodded, rising to his feet. He turned to Evelyn. "Take care of her, please. I'll be back as soon as I can." As Richard was led away again, Lily turned to her grandmother, determination shining in her eyes. "Grandma, we have to help Uncle Richard. He's innocent. I know he is." Evelyn smiled sadly. "I know you want to help, sweetie, but this is something for the grown-ups to handle." But Lily wasn't convinced. In her mind, a plan was already forming. If the grown-ups couldn't see the truth, then she would have to show them. That night, after Evelyn had fallen asleep, Lily quietly slipped out of bed. With the determination of a child on a mission, she began to search the mansion, looking for, well, she didn't know exactly what, but something that could help Uncle Richard. Meanwhile, in an office downstairs, David Miller smiled to himself. Everything was going according to plan. Soon, Richard Walker would fall, and he, David, would take control of the company. "Sorry, old friend," he murmured to himself. But in business, only the strongest survive. What David didn't know was that a little detective was on the loose in the mansion, determined to uncover the truth. And sometimes, a child's innocence can see what adult eyes, clouded by greed and suspicion, cannot. The night wore on, and Richard Walker's fate hung in the balance. But amidst the darkness, a small light of hope shone, in the form of a 7-year-old girl with a courageous heart and unwavering determination. The sun had barely risen when Lily awoke, her eyes shining with determination. While the adults around her seemed lost in a sea of worries and secrets, Lily decided it was time to take matters into her own hands. After all, she had saved Uncle Richard once. Surely she could help him again. Silently, she slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her grandmother Evelyn, who was sleeping soundly in the bed next to her. Lily donned her detective uniform, a t-shirt with a magnifying glass design and a skirt with pockets large enough to hold clues. Her first target of investigation was the guest room itself where they were staying. With keen eyes, Lily examined every corner, every drawer, every shadow. She noticed things that adults would likely have overlooked: a small scratch on the doorframe, an almost imperceptible stain on the expensive carpet, the way the morning light created strange patterns on the walls. "As if I were an important document, where would I hide?" she murmured to herself, imitating the detectives she saw on TV. Finding nothing in the room, Lily decided to expand her search. With silent steps, she ventured through the halls of the mansion, her wide eyes absorbing every detail. In the living room, something caught her attention, a slightly crooked painting on the wall. Intrigued, Lily approached and, standing on tiptoe, tried to straighten it. To her surprise, the painting moved, revealing a small safe embedded in the wall. "Wow," she whispered, her eyes shining with excitement, just like in the movies. Unfortunately, the safe was locked and Lily had no idea how to open it, but the discovery encouraged her. She was on the right track. Continuing her exploration, Lily reached Richard's office. The door was slightly ajar, and she peeked inside. The room was imposing, with bookshelves filled with books and a massive dark wood desk. Lily cautiously entered, her eyes scanning the room. On the desk, she saw stacks of papers and folders. Approaching, she began to examine the documents, even though she didn't understand much of what was written. Suddenly, something caught her eye, a folder with the name Davis stamped on the front. Lily's heart skipped a beat. Davis was her parents' last name. She opened the folder, her eyes widening as she examined the papers inside. There were many numbers and words she didn't understand, but in the midst of it all, there was a photograph. Lily gasped. In the photo were her parents, younger than she remembered, but unmistakable, and with them were Richard and another man she recognized from the voices she had heard the day before. David, she remembered. With slightly trembling hands, Lily took the photo and hid it in her skirt pocket. She knew she shouldn't take things without permission, but something told her this photo was important. Just then, she heard voices approaching the office. Panicked, Lily closed the folder and put it back on the desk, then quickly hid behind a heavy curtain. The door opened fully, and Lily heard her grandmother's voice. "I'm not sure what I'm looking for exactly," Evelyn was saying, her voice tense. "Richard said it was documents related to the accident," replied a male voice Lily didn't recognize. "He thinks they can prove his innocence." Lily held her breath. Documents about her parents. Accident. Her heart beat faster. "Gerda, but there's nothing here," Evelyn said, frustration evident in her voice. "The folder he mentioned isn't on the desk." Lily frowned. The folder was right there. She almost came out of her hiding place to show her grandmother, but something stopped her. An instinct, perhaps, or simply the fear of being caught where she shouldn't be. "We'll keep looking," the male voice said. "It must be somewhere." Lily heard the footsteps receding and the door closing. She waited a few moments before emerging from behind the curtain, her heart pounding. Confused and a little scared, Lily quietly left the office and returned to the guest room. Her grandmother hadn't returned yet. Lily took the photo out of her pocket and examined it again. Her parents looked happy, smiling alongside Richard and David. But something in David's eyes bothered her. He didn't look as happy as the others. When Evelyn finally returned to the room, she found Lily sitting on the bed, the photo in her hands. "Lily!" Evelyn exclaimed, surprised. "So where did you find this?" Lily looked at her grandmother, her eyes full of questions. "In Uncle Richard's office." "Grandma, why was Uncle Richard with Mommy and Daddy in this picture? And who is this other man?" Evelyn sighed deeply, sitting down next to Lily. She took the photo, her eyes filling with tears as she saw her daughter and son-in-law. "Thank you, sweetie," she said softly. "There are so many things I wanted to tell you when you were older, but I think now is the time." And so, Evelyn began to tell Lily about the past, about how her parents worked for Richard's company, about the suspicions that arose before the accident. "Your father discovered something, Lily, something that worried him a lot. He was planning to tell Richard everything, but then—" Lily held her grandmother's hand. "The accident happened." Evelyn nodded sadly. "Yes, and ever since, I've wondered if it really was an accident." Lily processed all of this, her young mind struggling to understand the implications. "But Uncle Richard is good, Grandma. He wouldn't hurt Mommy and Daddy, would he?" Evelyn hugged Lily tightly. "I don't know, sweetie. That's what we're trying to find out." At that moment, the phone rang. Evelyn answered, her face tensing as she listened. "Yes, I understand. I'll do what I can," she said before hanging up. "That was Richard," she explained to Lily. "He needs us to find some documents in his office, documents that can prove he's innocent." Lily felt her heart quicken. She knew exactly which documents Richard wanted. "Grandma," she said, her voice filled with determination, "I know where the documents are. I saw the folder with the name Davis in the office." Evelyn looked at Lily, surprised and a little worried. "Lily, you shouldn't be touching Uncle Richard's things." "But Grandma, it's important. We have to help Uncle Richard." Evelyn hesitated, clearly torn between her desire to protect Lily and the need to find the truth. "All right," she said finally. "We'll look together, but you have to promise me you'll stay close to me the whole time. Understood?" Lily nodded vigorously, excited to be able to help. Together, grandmother and granddaughter left the room, ready for their detective mission. What they didn't know was that their search was about to unearth long-buried secrets, secrets that would change their lives forever. Lily, with her childish curiosity and courageous heart, was about to become the key to unraveling a mystery that the adults around her were struggling to understand. And so, the little detective set off on her most important mission, unaware that her discoveries were about to shake the foundations of everything she knew. Richard's office was silent, the afternoon sunlight filtering through the heavy curtains. Lily, having stealthily escaped her grandmother's watchful eye, crouched behind the massive mahogany desk, her heart pounding with the thrill of her secret mission. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for something, anything that could help Uncle Richard. That's when she noticed it, partially hidden under a stack of papers, an old wooden box. Intrigued, Lily pulled it closer. With trembling fingers, she opened the box. The smell of old leather and aged paper enveloped her. Inside, she found a miscellany of items, old photographs, yellowed letters, and gleaming under the dim light, a silver pocket watch. Lily picked up the watch, feeling its weight in her small hands. Something about it seemed strangely familiar. She turned it over, noticing an inscription on the back. To Peter, with love. Always yours, Amelia. Lily's heart leaped. This watch had belonged to her father. The moment that thought crossed her mind, something strange happened. The world around her seemed to sway, like heat waves on a hot summer day. And then, suddenly, she was no longer in Richard's office. Lily found herself in the back seat of a car, the seatbelt tight against her chest. In front of her, she could see the backs of her parents' heads. Her father, Peter, was driving, while her mother, Amelia, was talking animatedly about something. "We can't let this go on, Peter," Amelia was saying, her voice tense. "We have to tell Richard what we've found." Peter nodded gravely. "I know, honey, but we have to be careful. David already suspects we know something." Lily felt a chill run down her spine as she heard David's name. In the memory, she saw her father glancing in the rearview mirror, his eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. Suddenly, bright headlights flooded the car. Lily heard her mother scream, her father curse as he swerved the steering wheel sharply. The sound of tires screeching on the asphalt, the shriek of twisting metal, and then darkness. Lily snapped back to reality with a gasp, the watch slipping from her trembling hands and falling to the floor with a dull thud. She was back in the office, cold sweat trickling down her forehead, her heart hammering in her chest. The watch had sprung open with the fall, and something fluttered out. With shaking hands, Lily picked up what appeared to be a folded photograph. Carefully unfolding it, she felt her stomach churn. In the photo were her father and mother, along with Richard and David. But it wasn't a happy photo like the one she had found before. The faces were tense, the postures rigid. David was half turned away, as if he were about to leave the photo, his face a mask of contained anger. Turning the photo over, Lily saw a series of numbers and letters scribbled hastily, followed by a sentence, "The truth about the fake accounts. Safe B613. At that moment, the office door opened. Evelyn entered, her face a mixture of worry and relief at seeing Lily. "Lily, thank goodness, I was looking all over—" Her voice trailed off when she saw the state of her granddaughter. "Sweetie, what happened?" Lily looked at her grandmother, tears starting to stream down her cheeks. "Grandma," she sobbed, I remembered the accident." Evelyn paled, rushing to embrace Lily. "Oh, sweetie," she whispered, her own voice choked with emotion. Between sobs, Lily told Evelyn about the memory that had resurfaced, about her parents' voices, about the bright headlights and the terrible sound of the collision. "And then," Lily continued, still trembling, "I found this." She held out the photograph to Evelyn. Evelyn took the photo, her eyes widening in shock as she saw the image. She turned it over, reading the notes on the back, and Lily saw her grandmother's face grow even paler. "Lily," Evelyn said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper, "where did you find this?" Lily pointed to the fallen watch. It was hidden in Daddy's watch. "Grandma, what are these fake accounts? Why were Mommy and Daddy scared? And why does David look so angry in the picture?" Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. When she opened them again, Lily saw a determination she had never noticed before in her grandmother's gaze. "Lily," Evelyn said, her voice firm despite the tears in her eyes, "for a long time I've been trying to protect you from the truth. But now I see that the truth has found a way to come out anyway." She knelt in front of Lily, holding her granddaughter's hands in hers. The accident that took your parents, it wasn't an accident, sweetie. Your father had discovered something terrible about the work he was doing, something that involved Richard, David, and some company accounts that weren't right. Lily felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. So, someone hurt Mommy and Daddy on purpose? Evelyn nodded sadly. I believe so, sweetie. And now with this photo and these notes, I think we can finally find out who did it and why. Lily looked at the photo in her hands, at her parents' tense faces, at the anger in David's eyes, at Richard's worried expression. So many questions swirled in her head, so many emotions battled in her chest. But amidst the confusion and fear, one thing became clear to Lily. She needed to help uncover the truth. For her parents' memory, for Uncle Richard, and for herself. Grandma, she said, her voice small but determined. What do we do now? Evelyn hugged Lily tightly, kissing the top of her head. Now, sweetie, we fight. We fight for the truth, for justice, and for the memory of your parents. As the sun set outside, casting long shadows across the office, grandmother and granddaughter embraced, united in their determination to unearth the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The past buried for so long was finally coming to light, and with it, the promise of long-awaited answers, and the dangers those answers might bring. Lily knew her life would never be the same again, but with the strength of her grandmother by her side, and the memory of her parents guiding her, she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The little girl who had once saved Richard from an accident was about to embark on her most important mission, to save the truth from oblivion and perhaps bring justice to those she loved. The police interrogation room was silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioner and the occasional scraping of a chair. Lily sat between her grandmother Evelyn and a kind child psychologist, Dr. Green, her small fingers nervously clutching a teddy bear. Across the table, Detective Thompson observed the scene with a mixture of compassion and professional determination. Lily, he said gently, I know this is difficult, but can you tell us what you remembered? Lily looked at Evelyn, who nodded encouragingly. In a trembling voice, the girl began to recount her newly recovered memories of the accident. She spoke of her parents' tense whispers, of the fake accounts once of the bright headlights and the terrible sound of the collision. Dr. Green gently guided Lily through the narrative, helping her organize her confused memories. It's normal for traumatic memories to be a little hazy, Lily, she explained. You're doing very well. When Lily finished, Detective Thompson leaned forward. And the photograph you found, Lily? Can you show us? Evelyn handed the photo to the detective, who examined it carefully. His eyes narrowed as he read the notes on the back. This changes everything, he murmured, more to himself than to the others in the room. Meanwhile, in another interrogation room, Richard Walker faced his own questioning. When the detective entered with the photograph, Richard felt his stomach sink. Mr. Walker, the detective said, placing the photo on the table. Would you care to explain this? Richard looked at the image, vividly remembering the day it was taken, the day everything began to fall apart. It's time for the truth, isn't it? He said, his voice weary. It all started with the financial irregularities. Richard explained how Peter Davis, Lily's father, was the company's chief accountant and had discovered significant discrepancies in the accounts. He suspected that someone was embezzling funds and falsifying records. Peter came to me with his suspicions, Richard continued. He believed David was behind it. I always said I didn't want to believe it. David was my friend, my partner. I asked Peter for more time to investigate discreetly. Richard closed his eyes, reliving that fateful night. I should have done more, he whispered. I should have stopped David, supported Peter, but I was afraid of losing everything we had built. At that moment, the door burst open. A police officer entered, breathless. Sir, David Miller is attempting to leave the country. We have units in pursuit now. Detective Thompson jumped to his feet. Keep me informed, he ordered, before turning back to Richard. Continue, Mr. Walker. What happened the night of the accident? Richard took a deep breath. I followed David. He said he was going to take care of the problem. I didn't know what he planned to do. When I saw the Davises' car on the road, I tried to warn them, but... His voice trailed off. The detective waited patiently while Richard gathered the strength to continue. David forced their car off the road. I saw it all happen, but I couldn't do anything. When I got there, Peter and Amelia were already gone. Lily was unconscious in the back seat. Detective Thompson frowned. Why didn't you report this at the time, Mr. Walker? Richard lowered his head. Cowardice. Guilt. I helped Lily out of the car. I called an ambulance and ran before they arrived. David, he threatened to implicate me in the fraud if I said anything. And I didn't want to lose everything. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the distant sound of sirens. In the next room, Lily was finishing her session with Dr. Green when the door opened. Detective Thompson entered, his face a mixture of triumph and sorrow. Mrs. Davis, Lily, he said gently, we have news. David Miller was apprehended trying to flee the country. He confessed. Evelyn gasped, pulling Lily close. Confessed to what, exactly? The detective briefly explained David's confession, corroborated by Richard's testimony. Lily listened silently, tears streaming down her cheeks. And Uncle Richard? She asked in a small voice. Did he help the bad man? The detective knelt down to Lily's eye level. No, sweetie. Uncle Richard made mistakes. Yes, but he didn't hurt your parents. In fact, he was the one who pulled you from the car after the accident. Lily blinked, surprised. A hazy memory surfaced, strong arms carrying her, a gentle voice murmuring, It's going to be all right, little one. Can I see Uncle Richard? She asked hesitantly. The detective exchanged a glance with Evelyn, who nodded slowly. Minutes later, Richard was brought into the room. He looked exhausted, his eyes red from crying. Upon seeing Lily, he fell to his knees. Lily, I'm so sorry. So very sorry. I should have done more. I should have stopped. He was interrupted when Lily rushed to him, throwing her small arms around his neck. You saved me, she whispered. I remember now. Richard hugged her back, silent sobs shaking his body. Forgive me, Lily. Please forgive me. Evelyn watched the scene with tears in her eyes. She approached, placing a hand on Richard's shoulder. You saved my granddaughter, she said softly. And now, you've finally brought justice for my daughter and son-in-law. Thank you, Richard. Detective Thompson cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. Mr. Walker, we still have much to discuss regarding your involvement and your silence all these years. But your testimony and cooperation will be taken into consideration. Richard nodded, still holding Lily. I understand. I'm ready to face the consequences of my actions, or rather, my inaction. As night fell over New York City, the truth had finally come to light. David Miller would face justice for his crimes. Richard Walker would have to answer for his silence and complicity. And Lily, the little hero whose courage had triggered it all, finally had answers to the questions that had haunted her young life. The road ahead would be difficult. There would be courts, testimonies, sensational headlines. But in that room, at that moment, there was also something else. The promise of healing, of redemption, and of a new beginning. Lily looked at Richard, then at her grandmother, and finally at Detective Thompson. Is it over? She asked softly. The detective smiled gently. The worst is over, little one. Now we can begin to rebuild. And so, amidst the ruins of long-held secrets, a new story began to be written. A story of truth, justice, and above all, of love and forgiveness. Richard hugged Lily tighter, feeling the weight of years of guilt begin to dissipate. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you both, he promised, looking from Lily to Evelyn. Evelyn smiled through her tears. You already have, Richard. By bringing the truth to light, you've given us the chance to finally move on. Lily, exhausted but relieved, looked at the adults around her. Her small act of saving Richard from that accident so long ago had triggered a chain of events that finally brought the truth to light. She didn't understand everything completely, but she knew that somehow her family, both those who had departed and those who remained, would finally find peace. "Can we go home now?" she asked, her voice small and tired. Richard and Evelyn exchanged glances. "Yes, sweetie," Evelyn replied. "Thanks, let's go home." As they left the police station, Lily between Richard and Evelyn, each holding one of her hands, the future seemed uncertain, but full of possibilities. The truth had been revealed, and with it came the chance for a new beginning for all of them. 3 years had passed since that fateful night when the truth came out. Lily, now 10 years old, sat on the balcony of Richard's mansion, her eyes fixed on the New York City skyline. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, a spectacle that still amazed her, even after living there for so long. "Lily, are you all right, sweetie?" Her grandmother Evelyn's soft voice brought her back to the present. Lily smiled, a smile that now reached her eyes. "Yes, Grandma, just thinking." Evelyn sat beside her, putting an arm around her granddaughter's shoulders. "About what?" "About everything. About how things have changed." Lily paused, her eyes turning to the framed photo in her hands, a picture of her parents, smiling and happy. Sometimes it's still hard, you know. Remembering them, but also remembering that night. Evelyn nodded understandingly. The past 3 years hadn't been easy. Lily had undergone intense therapy sessions, struggling to process her recovered memories and the truth about what happened to her parents. There were nightmares, crying spells, moments of anger and confusion, but there was also healing. "I know, Lily," Evelyn began softly. "For a long time I thought I was protecting you by hiding the truth. I was afraid that knowing what really happened would hurt you even more." Lily turned to her grandmother, her eyes filled with an understanding beyond her years. "I know, Grandma, and I understand, but I'm glad I know the truth now, even if it hurts sometimes." At that moment, Richard appeared on the balcony, his face lighting up when he saw Lily and Evelyn. After a long and tumultuous legal process, he was finally acquitted of all charges. His cooperation with the authorities and his genuine remorse weighed in his favor. More importantly, Lily's testimony about how he saved her from the wrecked car was crucial to his acquittal. "My 2 favorite girls," he said affectionately, sitting on Lily's other side. "What are we talking about?" "About changes," Lily replied, leaning against him. It was amazing how, in just 3 years, Richard had become such an important figure in her life. Not a replacement for her father, but a protector, a friend, a father in a different way. Richard nodded, his face turning serious. "Speaking of changes, Lily, there's something I'd like to discuss with you and Evelyn." Lily and Evelyn exchanged curious glances. "As you know, after everything that happened, I decided to use my resources in a better way," Richard continued. "The Davis Foundation has grown beyond anything we could have imagined." The Davis Foundation, created in memory of Lily's parents, had become Richard's main focus in recent years. Dedicated to helping orphaned children and families in difficult situations, the foundation had already impacted thousands of lives. "And you, Lily, have been such an important part of that," Richard smiled at the girl. "Your work with the other children, your compassion, you're truly extraordinary." Lily blushed at the praise. She loved helping at the foundation, especially with the projects aimed at children her own age. "But there's something else," Richard continued, his voice becoming slightly nervous. "Lily, Evelyn, over the past 3 years, the 3 of us have become a family, in a way I never imagined possible." He paused, taking a deep breath. "And I'd like to make it official, if you agree, of course." Lily blinked, confused. "What do you mean, Uncle Richard?" Richard looked at Evelyn, who nodded encouragingly, tears glistening in her eyes. "Lily," he said softly, "I'd like to adopt you legally. Make you my daughter, if that's what you want." The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Lily looked from Richard to Evelyn, her heart pounding. "But what about Grandma?" she asked finally, her voice small. Evelyn took Lily's hand. "Oh, sweetie, I'll always be your grandma. Nothing will change that. But Richard, he loves you like a father. And you deserve to have that in your life." Lily felt tears welling up in her eyes. She looked again at the photo of her parents, then back at Richard and Evelyn. I'd love to," she whispered finally, a trembling smile spreading across her face. Richard pulled her into a tight hug, tears streaming freely down his face. Evelyn joined the hug, and for a moment they stayed like that, a family united by love and the hardships they had overcome. The following months were a whirlwind of paperwork, court hearings, and finally, a heartwarming adoption ceremony. Lily Walker Davis, as she chose to be called, embraced her new reality with an open heart. And so, on the day of Lily's 10th birthday, the Walker mansion was filled with laughter and joy. Children from the foundation played in the garden, volunteers and staff chatted animatedly, and at the center of it all was Lily, her eyes shining with happiness. "Lily! Lily!" a voice called. It was Leo, a boy Lily had met through the foundation. "Come see the cake." Lily ran to the cake table, gasping as she saw the elaborate creation. It was a miniature replica of New York City, with the Empire State Building made of chocolate. "Wow," she whispered, awestruck. Richard appeared beside her, smiling. "Do you like it, sweetie?" Lily nodded vigorously. "Hey, it's amazing, Dad." The term was still new, but it felt more and more natural. Richard felt his heart warm upon hearing it. Later, after the guests had left and the house had quieted down, Lily found herself on the balcony again. Richard and Evelyn joined her, each holding a mug of hot chocolate. "Just so," Richard said, "what does the birthday girl want to do now?" Lily thought for a moment. Can we visit Mom and Dad tomorrow? I want to tell them about today." Evelyn and Richard exchanged emotional glances. "Of course we can, sweetie," Evelyn said softly. "And then," Lily continued, her face lighting up, "can we start planning our vacation?" Richard chuckled. "Ah, yes, our first family vacation. Where do you want to go, Lily?" Lily smiled, looking up at the starry sky. "Anywhere, as long as we're together." As they made excited plans for the future, Lily silently reflected on the path that had brought them here. That day 3 years ago, when she saved Richard from being hit by a car, now seemed like the beginning of something much bigger than she could have ever imagined. Her small act of courage not only saved a life, but triggered a series of events that, although painful and frightening at the time, brought truth, justice, and finally, a loving family to her. Lily looked at Richard and Evelyn, her heart overflowing with love. She knew she would always miss her biological parents, would always love them and honor their memory. But here, now, she had found a new kind of happiness, a new chance at having a family. The future stretched before them, bright and full of possibilities, and Lily was ready to embrace it, with courage, love, and the strength that came from knowing that, no matter what happened, she would never be alone again. As the sun set over New York City, painting the sky with shades of hope and promise, Lily Walker Davis smiled. This wasn't an ending, she realized. It was just the beginning of a wonderful new chapter in her life, and she couldn't wait to see what the future held.